share my screen.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, this is Neil from the Professional Development Virtual Chapter. Welcome to everyone who's joined us today. And I'm going to go through a few items of community news first before we get started with the session. So first off, just quickly, this is the community news for December 2015. A quick kind of visual on your screen there for all the different virtual chapters that are currently available to you today. So there's a large number of them to choose from. So if you're not aware of all the virtual chapters, have a quick look at the screen now. And any of those you want to join, you can go to the sequelpass.org website and log in with your credentials, and you'll be able to register and join that past chapter. You've got news about all the different events that are running. And if you want more information about which events are running, we're going to quickly show you a quick summary now. But all of those are listed on the Sequel Pass website. So you can see here we have December the 7th, Professional Development, Past Speaker 2015, Speaker Idol. And this is going to be presented by three of the past, also the Speaker Idol judges. Sorry, I lost the audio there for a sec. The judges. And we're going to be getting started in a sec with that. I will say also there's some international and also North American user group or Sequel Saturdays that are coming up, and if you want to attend those or want to know more about what's actually happening at those, please do go to the sequelsaturday.com website. Choose the chapter or the Sequel Saturday of choice and you get more information. If you want to speak at one of those, you can also see when those dates for speaker submissions are available as well. And that kind of ties in nicely with today's session that we're going to be covering around speakers and new speakers to kind of Sequel Saturdays and for Summit. And I just recently did the Southampton one yesterday, or actually on Saturday, and I'll be in the Slovenia Sequel Saturday on the 12th. And that's going to be a great event for me to go over to. I'm going to enjoy this.
That's one of all the panelists, yeah.
Of course, yes.
All of us are, yeah.
So it'd be great to see you guys there. Also, virtual chapters are not the only offering as well. Obviously, there are the Sequel Saturdays, but also the local chapters. Local chapters are those physical meetings that are held fairly regularly close to wherever you're located. And you can find out what those are within your region and maybe want to attend one of those. And if you don't have one in your region, maybe consider starting one of those local groups. That's what's happened in the past, and maybe somebody like yourself has said, we need a group, we don't have one here, let's get started. And we can help you kind of with the kind of organizational aspects of that as well. If you just want to maybe do some volunteering for the past organization, for your local chapter, for a Sequel Saturday, for an evening group, whichever that might be, pass interested in those. And we have a volunteer.sequelpass.org website where you can actually register your interest for that as well. So you can go into your My Volunteering section of your My Pass profile and get more information about what that entails. And again, you can kind of stay a member, get involved, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, of course, and obviously the website. And of course, you know, there's lots and lots of things, not only just these kind of events that we run, the chapter, the Sequel Saturdays, the Past Summit, etc. But, you know, being able to just kind of collaborate with your peers around the world from time to time is something also that's great to be able to do. So I'm now going to pass the reins of the evening across to Joey, and Joey's going to take us from here on in. Before I do that, quickly, we do have a £25 Amazon gift voucher, I believe, in dollars, and that will be awarded. I'll do a drawing at the end and send out details about who the lucky winner is, and you have to have been attending to get that, obviously. Let me just change the presenter. Joey, I'm going to make you presenter.
Yeah.
So any questions you have, guys, by the way, the GoToMeeting controls are on the right-hand side. They may disappear. Just put any of your questions in the chat section, and I will also try and relay those over to our presenters for the evening as well. So, Joey, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and the other judges that we have here, and take it away.
Thanks, Neil. I'm Joey D'Antonio. This is Past Summit. 2015 Speaker Idol, the recap. Neil introduced this pretty well, but if you're not familiar, Speaker Idol is a competition we had at Past Summit. It's meant to encourage new speakers to come in and kind of give a 5-minute talk, and the winner of the competition gets a guaranteed speaking slot at Past Summit next year. So it's a great opportunity, and I wouldn't say these are experienced speakers, but not the most experienced, but they definitely do have some speaking experience. So our panel for today is myself, Joey D'Antoni. I'm Data Platform MVP. I was a judge in the Speaker Idol competition. You can find me on Twitter at jdanton. I'm a principal consultant for Denny, Cherry & Associates Consulting, and Denny is missing late because he's on a call with a client. He should be here in a few minutes. I'll hand off to Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen. I was the Speaker Idol finals judge, which meant they didn't let me be judgy for people during the pre-rounds, but I came in sort of as a new set of eyes for the final part.
Cool. And you tweet a little bit, don't you?
I tweet a little bit. Yeah, actually I'm coming up on 200,000 tweets any day now.
Nice. So today's agenda we wanted to talk about was a little bit of what worked and what didn't in Speaker Idol. In general, the presentations were all very, very good, but there were some people who did things better than others, and we kind of broke that down into some factors. And Karen, do you want to kind of walk through and give an overview of the factors here?
So we're just going to talk about speaking in human factors, where it was hard when we talked about this because when Joey and I were preparing this, we were thinking about how we could spend an hour on every little subject that we wanted to talk about. And I think that's because there's just so many things that everyone has an opinion about in speaking. But we kind of came up with these buckets of you, the speaker, the logistics, the technical stuff, doing those dreaded demos, and dealing with your slide deck.
And then hopefully Denny makes it here by the end, because we're going to talk about some stuff that we're planning on doing for 2016, and I think he knows more about that than either of us right now. So.
But we could just overpromise a whole bunch of stuff too.
That always works. I mean. So just to review Speaker Idol, congratulations to all who participated. We had 4 rounds, 4 preliminary rounds with 4 speakers in each. David Maxwell was the overall winner. Teresa Eisenman was the runner-up, and I have to say it's a really tough decision. They both gave really excellent talks, and it was interesting, both of them. So the 3 rounds are spread out through the summit, and actually I think that's something we're talking about changing for next year. The final preliminary round, so the 3rd preliminary round, was right before the final round. So that made it quite challenging, especially since David was the wild card. He had to make some edits to his presentation, some things like that. So we're going to try to space that out a little bit to make it fair for everyone. But in general, the sessions were very, very good overall. It was a very high quality of presentation, and the competition bar was set quite high.
Yeah.
Did you have any comments from your observations in the finals, Karen?
Well, so I'd been a judge the year before where I got to attend most of the sessions. It was really hard coming in at the end because by then, we'd kind of picked the top of each round with one sort of, there was a wild card, right?
Right.
So it was a lot harder to choose because by then the competition had been down to the best of all the new people who had never spoken at Summit before, so that was really cool, but hard.
And so if you aren't familiar with the format, it's a 5-minute technical session. It doesn't have to be technical, it could be professional development as well. You're not required to give a demo, or you can. You can change your topic for the finals or not. These are all things that you'll kind of get judged on. And I will say, we had someone change their topic for the final, and it didn't go as well as their initial presentation. In general, I don't think that's something that the judges are blown away by. So if you're out there listening and you want to do that next year, unless you have 2 talks that are drilled perfectly, I really wouldn't change your topic for the final. Make it better, because we're actually as a judge, I think I'm more likely to observe you making a change based on feedback you received on your initial presentation than doing a whole new presentation and potentially having other landmines to screw up.
And, you know, that's kind of interesting because I think the same thing happened last year, and yet that turned out to be, I believe, you know, a fairly successful strategy.
Peter won.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I was hoping I had remembered that correctly. So the thing is, I mean, not everyone who participates in Speaker Idol is a new speaker. It's just, you know, it's open to people who have never spoken at Summit. There are plenty of experienced speakers who have never spoken at Summit for all kinds of reasons. I think, you know, it's a good mix of fairly new speakers, fairly, you know, people who are newish to speaking, and then people who are presenting for a long time. One of the harder things about this is I find doing 5-minute presentations much more difficult than doing a 45-minute or an hour-long session. And so some people feel that changing your topic 5 minutes to 5 minutes is very easy. I think it's difficult because I don't practice my 1-hour ones much anymore, but I practice the 5-minute ones because I need to know what I can fit in, meaningful things I can fit in that time frame. And I see Denny's joining us very soon. He's connecting-ish, so that's good. But the switching of topics can be important if in your original round and you moved advanced, you were told that you had either way too much to cover, which is a normal sort of error that first-time 5-minute speakers do, or that you needed to make radical changes.
Yeah, that would be fine. I mean, generally speaking, given the format of the competition, if you were that off, you're not going to win. But yeah, especially if you're a first runner-up and you made it into the finals, then it's something you might want to consider. Yeah. But you touched on kind of a nice thing there that I think was the mistake that the speaker I'm thinking of made was he had a topic that was perfect for 5 minutes, and he changed to a topic that was much harder to cover in 5 minutes. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I'm not sure if we have a whole slide on it. If you're doing a 5-minute talk, like Karen says, it's much easier to do a 60-minute or 75-minute talk because you can scope out, you can go wild with demos, you can get in-depth with questions. With 5 minutes, you just don't really have any time to do anything.
And yet we're going to tell you you have to take time to do a whole bunch of things.
Every second is valuable in 5 minutes. There are 300 of them.
It's shocking. You're telling people to do 2 different things that are totally opposite of each other.
Hi, Denny.
Hi, Denny.
Hey.
Okay, so now that we've kind of reviewed Speaker, actually, Denny, do you have any comments on this year's Speaker Idol, just overall?
I thought it went really well. Granted, I remember about half of it because I was standing there on stage trying to talk while the judges were out of the room. That's the thing I remember the most, is trying to figure out what to say for 10, 15 minutes at a time. I thought that the attendees, the contestants, were all fantastic. I think every single one of them did a great job. And it just shows how good the speakers are in our little SQL Server community.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, so logistics. Getting there, making sure everything works, knowing how your screens work. All these kind of things fall under logistics. And the thing I'll say about Speaker Idol in relation to this is everybody who's in it gets a speaker badge, which means you have access to the speaker ready room at PASS, which does have a projector. You'll note the projector in the speaker ready room may not be the projector in your room that you're speaking in the Seattle Convention Center. Yep. So the moral of the story is get to your room as early as you can. Even get to the room if you can go in the morning and check it out. That's one quip I have. Karen?
Yeah, so when I'm in a new venue or just when I have time, if I'm doing something that's really critical, like at a conference where I don't have any flexibility of dealing with problems, is I will try to get into the room one of the days of the conference and hook up my laptop and see if there's any gotchas. That's harder to do if the room's busy with speakers in and out, but sometimes there are down times or early times when you can do that. I also look at things like the layout of the room. I look where the clocks are, or if there is one or not, whether there's a podium, where the power bars are. Does it look like they have lavalier mics, which are the ones that clip to your body, or is there a mic at the stand? And the reason I want to know all that is that impacts how I'm going to be able to deliver the presentation. I have to be flexible on that, but just getting to know what your environment is really important.
Yeah, and I think this also includes what I call HA and DR planning for presentations.
Yeah.
And we'll talk through this a little bit more in demos, but one of the things that you have available to you, especially when you're speaking at a big conference like Path Summit or Microsoft Ignite, is there's typically a switching box for switching the projectors. And the projectors in the switching box tend to be a pretty high quality. So one of the things you have the option of doing is if you wanted to use one machine for doing demos and another machine for using PowerPoint. We'll talk a little bit more about that in detail in a few slides, but that's something you can do. Just knowing how the internet works. So that's the internet, especially now that we all do a lot of Azure presentations, the internet's probably by far the biggest challenge. I know Karen and I were doing a presentation in India, and the reason why Karen and I were doing it was an Azure presentation that I had originally planned on doing myself, but we couldn't count on having the internet, so I was going to have no demos, so I needed Karen to help me fill out the 75 minutes.
Yeah, and the power did go out during our
The power went out 4 times during the presentation.
Yeah, so that was interesting. One of the other things about logistics is, so this is something that bugs me as a speaker no matter what the time frame is that I go early, but oftentimes at a conference, people from the previous session are crowding around the speaker, trying to ask questions or talk to the speaker, and that's actually a wonderful thing to have that kind of engagement with your audience. But that also leaves the previous speaker kind of tied to the podium or to the projector or wherever it is the speaker is. And my recommendation to everyone is to not be timid, to go up, even though a wonderful thing is happening with the speaker and his or her audience, and actually start trying to set up your laptop. Now, a great previous speaker will look at you and say, oh my gosh, I'm in your way, and start packing up his stuff and move on. But sometimes speakers won't move. And so you need to be assertive, polite and assertive, think Canadian, and start setting up, because you need that 15 minutes or 10 minutes to deal with any technical glitches so that your audience doesn't have to sit around and wait for you to get ready.
Yeah, I would definitely.
Go ahead, Jay.
I definitely echo the know your room. The Seattle Convention Center, which is where PASS is most of the time, is an interesting place logistically. I presented in 3 rooms this year. I had 3 different projectors and 3 different switch boxes. So you've even though you do see one in one place, it may not be everywhere, and that's just what the convention center has, because they may not deal with massive conventions all the time, so they may not have 50 of the same thing, or the projectors they need for the giant rooms like 6A, B, and C aren't going to be the same as the projectors they have in room 401, which is a very small room.
Right, and the majority of the rooms that, not the big rooms, well, even in the big ones, what you don't realize is the screens are well behind you as a speaker. They're very difficult to see, and you're up on a podium, and there's no way for you to see what's projected, and there's no speaker monitor. So a lot of times, even I'm guilty of it, is I have to step forward or ask the audience what they're seeing. It's a lot harder to do. I think in the speaker idle room this year, the screens were kind of angled. Most of our presenters did a great job of not having to look at the screen. They could either just look at the audience or glance at their own screen. But where that comes into play is in demos, where it's really hard to see what the audience sees.
Yeah, one thing I noticed in this, particularly in the speaker idle room, and by the way, 6F had the confidence monitors, but it was the only room I was in this year that had them.
Was that a past TV room though?
I think so. Yeah, it was.
I fought for those. I fought for those because if it's going to be live streamed, there ought to be a monitor.
Yeah, there was a problem, and I think it happened universally to everyone, so I don't think there was a good fix for it. But like the right monitor or the right screen in the speaker idle room had an issue where it was like not framing correctly, and there was a little bit of black space.
Yeah, Keystone was all off, and the maintenance light kept going off too.
Yeah, so I feel like we're talking about the logistics topic and our next topic at the same time, because that's good because we still have a lot of stuff to get to, but because we kind of lift up. The other thing about logistics, I think you went too far. Oh, wait.
I was sliding ahead.
Okay, sorry. I'm looking at my outline instead of that, so maybe it was all one topic there. The one other thing was that you should always have your own clicker, even if a lot of places now provide you with a remote control for your slides, because I think it's important to, be familiar with the tool that you're going to use to advance your slides so you can do it in a way that doesn't look like you're at Hogwarts trying to use a magic wand of some type, and that you're familiar where all the buttons are so you're not hitting the blank button or the left mouse button or something like that on it.
And always bring your own dongle.
Dongle, right, and several of them.
And have 3 of them.
Yeah, and spare batteries.
Yeah, spare batteries.
Yep. Yeah, never assume that the projectors or the switching system is going to have whatever the newest fangled plug is.
That's right. Most
EGA.
EGA.
Yep. So I'm actually looking in my bag right now. Cable Matters has a really nice, and it's about $20 on Amazon. It's got VGA, HDMI, and DVI, and it goes into a mini display port, which if you're using a Surface or a MacBook, that's going to be and I think some of the Lenovo's, that's going to be what you use for display. Great device because it can work with everything. Buy 2 of them.
Right, because you'll lose one, and put your sticker or your name on it. So the other thing is that people who have HDMI ports on their laptops or devices, they tend to think they don't need any dongles because every place will just have HDMI, and I think HDMI is really, really rare outside of a known tech center. So like if you go to a technical company or a technical training facility, you may get HDMI, but a lot of times you won't.
Always plan on having something that can use VGA with your machine because
that's a good point.
Everything usually defaults to VGA.
Yeah.
Okay, so storytelling and emotion, and I think this came up because we had a couple of really powerful presentations, and I think there were a couple of good presentations that could have been better with better storytelling. And man, it's hard to convey a story in 5 minutes, but there is definitely an arc to a really good presentation. It's really important to say, explain in the first 30 seconds what you're trying to say. And in a 5-minute presentation, especially at Speaker Idle, where Denny does a lovely job of introducing you, there is no need to even mention your name. You can have it on your first slide, but it's the one time I'm going to say don't do self-promotion because you can do it in your slides and then just start talking about what you're going to talk about. But you definitely want to introduce your presentation, tell the story of why you're doing what you're doing, do it, and then at the end explain why you did it again. Karen?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. We had a couple of feedback to speakers about, you probably burned through too much time. We'll just keep coming back to 5 minutes goes really fast, and to get more than one point across and set the proper context and deal with, targeting to a broad generalist audience, spending a minute talking about yourself and your company and how you came up with the topic, that's a minute that you really don't have to spare in a 5-minute presentation.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I decided to do the intros this year, because I know a lot of people last year, back in the olden days of 2014, a lot of people everybody had to introduce themselves, and it took a good 20, 30, 45 seconds out of their presentation. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 20%. So, if you're trying to get that one point across, you've now got 4 minutes instead of 5 minutes to do it in. And it's hard enough to talk in 5 minutes and get an idea across. So that's why I wanted to do that intro for everybody, so that didn't kind of count against them, so they could just kind of hit that ground running with their presentation and just go.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll add to this is and this is really not about making use of the 5 minutes, but it relates back to that. You need to explain in really the clearest language you can at the beginning of your presentation what your technology/business goal of what you're talking about is and why you're doing it. Remember, especially at Speaker Idol, you're talking to a very generalist audience. There are DBAs, there are developers, there are report writers, there are business intelligence professionals. There's me. I don't know what the hell I am anymore.
Yes.
And you're talking to all those people. A subject like extended events or some special function in SSIS or something that Power BI does. You can assume probably everybody in the room knows what SSIS is, but to understand why you do something specifically, we talk about, I have these two streams of data, I want to split them, based on value, and this is the efficient way to do that. So, say it in a way you'd say it to somebody who's completely non-technical.
Yep, agree, especially as the non-DBA on the panel.
And that was one of the reasons I had Mark Sims be a judge, is because he's not a DBA or a SQL developer or a BI person. He's a C# programmer. I mean, he does other stuff at Microsoft, but his function in life has been to be a C# programmer until he became management. So that's one of the reasons I wanted him there, and you as well, Karen, is because you guys come from this non-quote-unquote DBA background, so you can. You don't know what extended events is, so if somebody does a 500 level extended event session, you can go to them and go, well, that was great, but what about the people in the room who weren't 500 level? So I thought you guys brought a really nice mix in to the panel of basically DBAs who were sitting with you when it came to that.
And choosing your level for something like this is pretty important too, because I like to say that whenever I do a talk, there's always, and most of my talks are in the 200 to 300 level, but whenever I do a talk like that, I always like to say there's probably a little bit of 100 level, and there's probably a little bit of 400 and 500 level in any of my talks. But you really, for these Speaker Idol talks where you have 5 minutes and you don't have time to convey any super technical depth, you really just can't go 400 or 500 level. So if you're thinking, I have this great idea about this really cool thing I did with extended events when some random rare event happens, don't do that. It's really tricky to convey that level of explanation in 5 minutes to bring it down to everyone's level.
Yep.
So next, our favorite, the AV guy, and we actually had a really good AV guy with Speaker Idol this year. He knew what he was doing. But this leads us into another handful of topics that are perils for new speakers, like microphones.
Yeah. So one of the things that, so usually at a big conference, you're going to get a lavalier mic. So something, again, one that clips to your collar, and then the little battery pack thing goes in your pocket. And the reason I use those two words is most female attire has no collar, and a lot of informal male attire these days, if you're wearing a t-shirt, that might work. So guys' collars on a t-shirt come up right under their chin, and that's not a great place for a lavalier mic. And then women tend to have clothing with no pockets. And you don't want to be holding on to the battery pack because that causes the cord to shift, and then the mic might flip over or it'll rustle, and that can be really annoying. So on days that you're speaking, you need to look at the wardrobe you're going to be wearing to see that you're wearing, this sounds so picky, but it's really important. It doesn't necessarily have to have a collar, but the area around your neck and chest has to have a place to clip that mic on, and most AV guys want that mic to hit you dead center, which is why like a button-up shirt, as most people think that's too formal, that's your best choice. For women, the mistakes we make is wearing a very thin, fine material shirt, which if you try to clip even a light mic, it just causes it to flop over. Or the other thing is a good AV guy wants that cord on the mic to go under your clothing. So you end up having to drop the wire down your shirt and then have it come out your waistband. But if you're wearing a dress, you're also going to have a problem because there's going to be no place to clip the battery pack. It really is something in formal environments to know that you have a lavalier mic, and you really don't want to hold a hand mic because that's your other option. If your clothing won't cooperate with this, the AV guy is going to run and get a hand mic, and then you're just going to feel like a talk show host or a lounge singer the whole time.
Well, and a handheld mic is tough to keep the right distance from your mouth when you're talking, especially if you're trying to do other things with your other hand, like present.
Right, and then it's impossible when you demo. Yeah.
As a guy, either wear a button-down shirt or wear a polo shirt that's got kind of a long button-down area. A lot of the speaker shirts we have 3 buttons. Those work pretty well because the button area is long enough to hold the mic pretty well. And then guys or girls always wear something with a waistband. I usually hang my mic pack in my back pocket or my belt behind me. But anything with a waistband will work. You can hang it on the waistband.
Right.
Usually.
And a lot of women's clothing, like a skirt or even pants that have faux pockets, because that seems to be popular, there's no place to hang it. So the real thing, it has a clip. So the best way to do it is to clip it on your waistband, but actually tuck it inside the waist of your skirt or something, because it makes it harder for it to brush off or fall off as you turn. And I've had that happen at some really important, a keynote I was doing where it fell off my waistband and pulled the plug out, and I had to interrupt in the middle of this live streaming thing to get my mic back on.
And never, ever, ever clip your microphone to your conference badge, nor ever, ever wear your conference badge on stage.
Yeah, so when I talk, even without a lavalier mic, I tend to take my conference badge off because it swirls around, it gets in my way. Sometimes it reflects the lights. It's just not usually a good thing to wear.
So Denny, Past TV was on camera this year. How would that change your approach to what you do for speaking in general?
So I don't know if you change my approach too much. I've done Past TV a couple of times outside of the speaker idle scenario. This was the longest time I've been in front of a camera in one shot was for the speaker idle. But when there is a camera, you definitely want to make sure you're looking at least towards the camera. The cameraman's not going to want you to look specifically at the camera. Usually they want you to look kind of past it, just over the camera guy's shoulder, because it looks better on film. You do want to be able to try to engage the audience that's watching you on the camera or through the camera while you're engaging with the audience in front of you. So don't, obviously, rule number 1, don't just start your laptop. That doesn't look good for the audience that's there, and it certainly doesn't work for the people that are watching you live streamed or on the recording. But you do want to make sure that you're at least acknowledging the camera and as if it was just a person standing in the back of the room. That way the people that are watching that video are able to see what's going on. Also make sure that your mic is turned on when you start, because otherwise the AV guy gets to interrupt your presentation and make you turn your mic back on, which we had a couple of times happen this year, I think.
And turned off when you use the restroom before you...
Yes. All the mics have a mute button or an on-off button, which you can easily find. If you can't find it, ask the AV guy before you go to the bathroom. Those mics have a range of about 1,000 feet, which is well within the circumference of your stage and a bathroom.
Or the other one is during a break on a longer presentation. Some people, you take a break and then go off and start talking to people, and you forget that your mic's still on.
Yeah. The one other thing I wanted to mention, and I thought about it because I was watching an NFL game last week, and one of the TV guys had the worst sports jacket I've ever seen for TV. Be really careful with patterns if you're going to be on camera. Solid colors work best. Soft patterns are fine, but anything that's kind of a bold pattern is going to go weird on the camera just because of resolution and lighting issues. And this guy was making me dizzy every time he moved because the camera couldn't deal with his sport coat, and it was just bad.
And yet
so
Don Cherry pulls it off.
Who pulls it off?
Don Cherry.
Yeah, but Don Cherry wears loud, solid colors.
Yeah.
Solid colors are okay. It's when you get into patterns that you have issues.
Yeah, nothing with like small stripes or anything like that.
Yeah,
That's definitely the camera.
Yeah.
So on to our next slide, demos. We had a wide range of demos. I don't think there were too many major demo failures. Some things were better than others. A couple of people did film demos, and a couple of people did. Some of them were better than others. I noticed one of the issues. Somebody had sped up their demo to help it fit in the 5 minutes, and I think in that session it lost a lot of the context because it was kind of a repeated data loading process, and they showed it kind of over and over again sped up. And I think it would have been better to say, here's the process, talk to it a little bit, and then kind of do a Julia Child and show the finished process at the end.
Or throughout.
Yeah.
So that's a key thing, especially if you do Azure and you might not have the internet. You need to have pre-baked solutions, even if it means having 5 VMs or 5 instances, 5 versions of files. You need to prepare for any one step failing for no fault of your own, so you can just keep moving forward.
Yeah, and recording demos is always a good thing, in my opinion. But there's definitely an art to how you do it, and like how you narrate a recorded demo. You want to make it almost look like you're doing it. So I've been doing a lot of video work for a company I've been doing some training for, and one of the things I've noticed is that when I record a demo, frequently when I record it and I go back to narrate it, because I typically record the narration separately, I have to slow down the demo, because even when you're like being conscious about moving slowly to demo something, it's still pretty fast, because you know what you're doing, and you can kind of blow through it pretty fast. Your audience doesn't, so it's really something you need to rehearse a few times, and probably if you're doing it for something like Speaker Idol or Past Summit, you want to have somebody else, a second set of eyes, take a look at it for you.
Mm-hmm. And then if I can represent the old people of the audience, font sizes, like know in your tool sets how to adjust your font sizes, whether it's SSMS or another tool, so that they are giant. And yes, there's less information you can show on the screen. Zoom it or zooming of any type is a good thing, but if you have to keep zooming around, you kind of make people carsick after a while. You need to find that right balance. And the tip that I use is set up your demo and put your laptop on your desk and stand 10 feet back and see how much you can read on your laptop screen. And that will give you a good feel about how people in your audience, how well they can see your demo.
If I remember correctly, David, who won, didn't use Zoom in at all. He just relied on having the right size fonts, which he did.
That's the best. That's absolutely the best, but not all tools or not all features of all tools let you do that.
Right. Yeah, you can't really do that with something like an execution plan, but yeah, for what he was doing, it worked fantastically.
Yeah. And then you need to know your zooming tools. So, a lot of us have encouraged certain speakers to embrace Zoom It, but they never ever use it and never ever practice. And it's not hard to learn. It's just you have to have the right setup and know how to zoom and get it to stop zooming and how to zoom out and how to use your mouse at the same time without zooming out, that kind of stuff.
And one other Zoom It tip I'd like to recommend is if you're using VM, so Denny and I do a lot of HADR kind of presentations, so where you end up having a lot of VMs. If you're using some kind of VM system where you can have a template that you're building your VMs from, make sure you put Zoom in your template so it's always there. Because it's never a nice surprise to be in a machine and go, oh crap, I don't have zoom in, and how do I zoom in now?
Yeah. Well, there's Windows Plus and Minus, but it's not as featureful. That's one thing. So know about your native zooming features, all right?
Yeah. And it's not as smooth in general.
No, it's awful, but it's at times, if you know what you're doing, better than nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing, and I noticed this seeing actually Rob Volk, who was in Speaker Idol, present. The default for highlighted text in SQL Server Management Studio, so if you're highlighting code, the default is this soft blue color that I find makes your code harder to read.
Yes.
I like to change that to a soft, I like to keep a white background, but change the highlighted text to a soft yellow that I like to call Post-it note yellow, because I have Post-it notes on my desk right now, and that's about the right color.
Yeah.
It just makes it a little bit easier for the audience to read your code.
Yeah, that's funny because when people highlight their code when they're demoing, they're actually masking it for me. I can't see it. It's not enough contrast for me.
Yeah. The other thing especially if you're speaking at a conference, a big conference like Summit, that you should definitely take advantage of, because this is something we observed in a few people speaking during Speaker Idol. It can be hard to switch from PowerPoint to demo and back to PowerPoint, especially if you're using presentation mode. I find that actually works better on the Mac, oddly, because you can just slide over to the VM and everything shifts for you. On Windows, it's a little bit trickier. I know I was presenting on Windows last week for the first time in a while, and I ran into that, and it was something that I would have dinged myself on. But you have good switching boxes and good switching capability at an event like Summit. So you should have, really, if you're serious about presenting, you should show up to a conference with two machines anyway, or at least two devices you can present off of. Maybe one of them is not a full-powered PC, it's just a tablet. But have your slides on one of them and then have your demos set up on the other. And then you don't have to do that awkward dance between PowerPoint and your demos. It's definitely a little bit more elegant way to go. So next we're going to talk about one of Karen's favorite topics, slides with just bullets and nothing else. I don't think we ran into this too much at Speaker Idol this year. The slides were pretty good for the most part.
Yeah, and this could just be my own pet peeve. A lot of templates, so first of all, death to all conference templates as far as I'm concerned. I mean, offer them, but making them mandatory. A lot of templates just come, with the important things, your title slide with their fancy logos and backgrounds, and then the sponsor slides, which you should not breeze over, but thank the sponsors and encourage your audience to thank the sponsors. And then logistics stuff and draw stuff and all of that good stuff. But most of them then just come with a series of bullet templates, which I think encourages people to put their thoughts down on their slides in bullet form. That really is not an impactful way of getting information across at all. And sometimes the bullets are distracting in themselves, so some people get rid of the bullets by putting little hearts or kittens or something there, still distracting. I try to have a goal with all of my decks to engineer out all the bullets. I think I even did it to something on this slide deck. I tend to use smart art, but not get smart art that gets in the way. There's a really nice list smart art thing that just has lines, and I actually used it on one of the slides in here, just lines between the words. I think that, separates your thoughts without adding pieces of information that aren't information at all. And that, if you can think of a way of putting down a series of thoughts without having every slide just be a series of bullets with the tiniest font all up in the upper left-hand corner of your slide, which means you're wasting all of that readability when you have room on your slide, I think there are much better options.
Your slides are for your audience, not for you.
Yeah, that's a good. Well, they're actually for both of us.
No, let me finish.
Yeah.
I have your purse right here, Karen.
Thank you.
You want to put all the information you can in your notes for your slides. Obviously, you're going to have some verbal cues for yourself, probably on the slide itself. But your goal is really to try to educate the audience and engage the audience. And it's hard to do that if you're reading your slides. You want to have your concepts on the slides, and you want to fill in the gaps with your detailed information. I've worked kind of hard on that, particularly on high availability and DR stuff, right? Because those are very conceptual sorts of presentations, like seeing how something like an availability group works, where you have 2 copies of the data. And being able to visually illustrate that works so much better than showing, bullet points about it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, so I tend not to use notes a lot. I know speakers who do. I think part of that has to do with I have a hard time seeing notes even in speaker mode. That I found that when I try to use notes, I just end up delaying my speech and trying to talk. So right now I have an outline of our presentation up because I'm at my desk and have a second screen to remind me of the things I want to say. But everyone should just use whatever features work for them that aren't distracting from the audience. But yeah, there shouldn't be paragraphs and bullet points and whole sentences on your slides. And then I'll pull a start of that is sometimes you need those. If you're writing a definition, if you're quoting somebody, if you're putting up, some some mnemonics or something like that, yeah, sure, go ahead and do that.
Yeah, definition and quotes are okay in my opinion, but just don't make it your whole slide deck.
Yeah, that's the big thing. And again, the templates kind of draw you in to try to do that because you're usually starting with a template slide. I start with the basic title and content, but I don't let the fact that it starts with a series of bullet points draw me into bullet points.
The other thing I've seen some people do in the past, and I like it, is to not use the conference, to use the conference template for the sponsor slides and the required conference slides, and then kind of roll with their own slides. Different conferences have different rules, of course, about doing that. But that can be, especially in the past summit slides, the last few years have been reasonable, the templates. They haven't been too bad. But
I forget what happened for IDLE. Did they have to use a template? I can't remember.
They didn't have to, but I asked them to.
Okay.
Because of the recordings.
Yeah.
So for instance, I personally don't like slides with a white background and text, especially in old conference centers like the Seattle one, where the lighting was never designed for projection, where the projectors might be old and not have, the projectors this year were pretty darn good, I thought. But in a lot of older venues, the projectors, because they cost $25,000 each 20 years ago, you don't get high contrast projection. And I actually find it much harder to read, and a lot of templates these days are done by graphic artists with beautiful, beautiful skills of using light gray text on a white background with a very fine font. That's unreadable in most older, large conference centers.
Those graphic designers are also working on lovely 4K monitors.
Yes, in a darkened room with subdued lighting, with their face, a foot from the monitor. And we see that on blogs now. That's the trend. Right now the trend in graphic design is light gray text on a white background with a very, very lightweight font. I find those impossible to make readable, and I've been known to use a familiar font that's a bit heavier or the heavier version of the same font, and that's not the same thing as bolding everything. Bolding can make things harder to read as well. It's, again, using that test of standing 10 feet back from your laptop and seeing what you can see.
So, Denny, this is the part where you get to promise a bunch of things and make Pass have to deliver them.
Sweet, I love this part.
So, what are we thinking is different in 2016? We already kind of established a couple of new rules this year. I know one was setting the order of the speakers in the final. I think that was the wild card goes first, and then the inverse order of what round you spoke in.
Yeah, I think that was what we decided. So yeah, so for next year, whoever the wild card is in the finals, they're first on the chopping block. And then it'll be Friday's winner, Thursday's winner, and Wednesday's winner. The other thing we're going to do different next year is, since I've now been burned twice in a row by having people not be able to show up for various emergencies, I'm going to have a couple of wild cards in the sidelines, so that if we do need to have somebody step in because somebody wasn't able to make it, I'll have an order of my wild cards that I can pick and grab from. So we'll have 12 people compete. I'll probably have 14 or 15 names on the list, so I'll have 2 or 3 extras who are going to be the in case somebody manages to not show up. That is not an incentive for them to go off and bump off the person. Just to be clear. And then this year we also had somebody compete in the first round who then won and had to back out. So there'll be an official rule saying that what we'll do in that case, which is what we did this year because we made it up on the fly, which was to bring in the runner-up and have them then become the winner for that round when the person bowed out. I think those are the rule changes.
I thought, ending Summit with it again is really a nice way to go, and we're kind of working behind the scenes on some other things with Pass that will hopefully come to fruition to make that even a better process. But yeah, it was a really nice way to kind of wrap up the week and have a good time.
Yeah, definitely. I think having the finals at the end of the conference is a great way to wrap everything up for the week.
That would be great.
And the other thing we're going to try and do is not have the third session right before the finale.
Right.
We'll put the third session before lunch on Friday, and then the finale as the last session of the day on Friday.
That would be great.
Yeah, because that was kind of brutal for numerous reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, especially if you're the wild card, or actually not even the wild card, but yeah, because the wild card did come from that session.
This time we happened to come from Friday.
Our winner was the wild card, who spoke probably 2 times within 40 minutes of each other.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and David was able to make some slide updates based on the feedback he received, and did a quite good job. It was interesting. In my notes, the notes I was looking back, and David, if you're listening, I think this is kind of interesting. David had mentioned on Twitter a few weeks ago that he didn't think he was as nervous the second time he gave the talk, and as he was the first. And in my notes, because in the finals, man, you're like the competition's really tight, so you're trying to make note of everything. I had made a note that at the very beginning of his presentation, he seemed a little bit more nervous, but he quickly got past it and did an excellent job of going back to back and covering a pretty nice technical topic in good detail.
Mm-hmm. And one of the interesting things that was here in my notes to try to mention is that your audience wants you to be successful, even though we all have speaker nerves and we know like that connectivity's bad or the room's bad or the projector isn't working or whatever massive failure you think is going on when you speak, chances are everyone in your audience wants you to be successful at making that. So they want you to sound confident, be confident, even if you're faking the heck out of it. Your slides are important, but if the slides were everything, then you could just mail them in and no one would need to hear you speak. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong. And we actually, even in the last session, there were a couple of little glitches that were happening with the projector or the mic or the demo or who knows. It's how you recover from them, how you keep going, how you don't keep apologizing or how you don't bail on it. All of that comes across as a very, very suave and powerful speaker if you're able to just keep rolling with the punches and still deliver some value, even if it wasn't the same value you thought you were going to.
So
that's really important.
I was at TechEd one year, and I was watching Mark Rusinovich, who's the Chief Technical Officer for Azure for Microsoft, give an Azure talk, and everything that went wrong in his session could. He lost connectivity to Azure. His mic battery died, and they had to replace the mic. He just kept rolling through all of it, and then finally at the end, as he went to hit his summary slide, PowerPoint crashed. He never missed it. and just kept rolling. It was one of the most impressive presentations I've ever seen, just from all the failures that he had that rolled through.
That sounds just like my tech ed, where I had authentication errors with Azure for no reason at all, but I had pre-baked milestones. My laptop cord got pulled out of my laptop, so it started thinking it was in power save mode, so I had to fix that. But you just keep going. I think that's the really important thing. And I was really impressed by our speakers that I could see in a couple places where something had gone some way that they didn't expect it to, and they just kept going. That's really one of the signs of a great speaker. Someone who doesn't panic and doesn't draw attention to when things are not going the way they expect them to. I also saw we had a question that we missed about the number of slides in the Q&A, and I think someone asked what's the right number of slides. So if you're asking for speaker idle, the right number of slides is the right number of slides for what you're trying to present. But in general, one of the ways to answer that is, are there any rules? So answering for a competition like speaker idle, Denny, I don't think you have any rules about number of slides or anything.
No. Yeah, this was asked during the prep for speaker idle. A couple of people asked,
yeah,
how many slides do they have to have? And I said, well, realistically, you should have at least one. Because it should have your name and stuff and show who you are, so that when we flip over to your monitor, there's something on the screen other than the Windows desktop.
Yeah.
And from there, you could roll into a 5-minute demo if you wanted to.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing that says you
or have 30 slides.
Yeah.
30
Right.
Yeah.
So I've seen one presentation where someone had a slide about every second, and I thought that was really cool, and it was very well done, and it was perfect. But there are other competition formats in this time frame where the number of slides are mandated, or that they have to be auto-advanced so that there's no clicker and you don't have access to the machine or anything. And I actually love those because they're harder to do. But the real answer to that is, the first question is, if you're doing a competition, you need to ask. And the second one is, you need to, if you're taking a 1-hour presentation and trying to cut it down to 5 minutes, I'm going to guess that you do not want more than 10 slides, but that's just a gross swag.
Yeah.
I've seen people show up with 70 slides.
I'd go as far to say, don't try to do what Karen just said. Don't try to take an hour and make it 5 minutes.
Yeah, don't do
Find
that.
a 5-minute topic, and you can probably expound on it to an hour potentially, but don't start out with a new topic.
Yes, so it's definitely a top-down.
An hour than it is to from an hour to 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. A good friend of mine who's a really great speaker and writer, he says that in a 1-hour presentation, he considers it successful if you get 3 major points across to your audience. So think about the math of that. If you're doing a 5-minute presentation, if you want to get 3 points across, they better be obvious and quick to do. But I try to tell people doing 5-minute ones to try to get 1 point across, 1 major point, even if it has 3 recommendations behind it.
Do we have any other questions? Neil, is there anything else? Any other questions in the queue?
Let's have a quick look. So yeah, the question was number of slides, that's been covered, and there was a quick one from Rob Volk saying about the Ignite presentation format, 20 slides in 5 minutes, but auto advanced to keep within the time frame, and he's got a link there that we can share. Yeah. Aside from that, I think the questions are pretty much covered. Going back was, does it have to be a DBA topic? I think we covered that. It can be any topic, any kind of subject that kind of is just the time frame is the limiter here. And were the recordings of Speaker Idle, and I said that they're the kind of recorders as a normal session. So we've got all of the kind of
actually, they're past TV, so they're freely available.
Okay, excellent, good information. So what we'll do is share that information out as well to everyone. Guys, have you got any more insights and information you want to share at this stage?
There's one more slide.
Okay.
Yeah, just our contact information. Thanks, everyone. Karen and I have decided we're going to be blogging about this a little bit, just various speaking topics, and be on the lookout for other webinars and blog posts.
So thanks to Joey, Denny, and Karen for your excellent insights into kind of speaking, especially the kind of around the obviously the speaker idol competition, but in general, kind of about how to approach kind of presenting in general as well. I'm just going to finish off now with a very quick presenter change back to myself, and just going to bring up a quick piece of information on my screen. Let me just do that. So I just wanted to make you aware that we have our next session is on January the 4th, and it's a session about writing technical books, something that I'm interested in looking more at. And this was another session from the summit that Kathy is going to present to us. That's on the 4th of January. And obviously you can go to the website for that. And I'm just going to switch over to the URL there for that. So it's obviously writing technical books about how to do that, and a living, breathing business card. I like the wording around that. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. This is a recording. It will be posted up to this evening. And guys, thank you for coming along and presenting for us today.
Thanks, Neil. See you this weekend in Slovenia.
Yeah, see you soon.
Yeah, all of you. See you soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,